Chris Grant is a busy man. In addition to being a successful Amazon seller, he runs the Clear the Shelf blog and resource website, as well as his YouTube channel. He's also the founder of the OA Challenge, which is designed to get new sellers started with online arbitrage. Chris has a very analytical brain. He's able to analyze a problem inside and out, and he uses his skill in every aspect of being an entrepreneur. Learning how to think about your business is something that each of us always needs to do really, really well, and Chris is a great example to emulate. So let's hear more about Chris's story. All right, Chris. So thanks for joining me tonight. I'm really excited to have you here and hear about all the things that are going on in your business, but also about your story and maybe drill down into some of the things that you have been maybe think about on more of a deeper level. So this will be a little bit different interview, I hope, for everyone watching. But as is standard in all these, I think it's important to give the backstory because some people don't know you and you're kind of like an OG and you've been around forever. But if you could give a little bit of your backstory about how you evolved selling on Amazon, that would be great.
Yeah. Let me, so I'll try to make it quick, but I'll jump all the way to the beginning. The first time we ever really arbitraged anything was probably 8th grade. We sold pizza from Pizza Hut to the kids in my school, and we were able to negotiate a discount to around 50 cents a slice, and then we were selling it for about $1 a slice, and really scalping the prices there, or price gouging the other kids, but. That kind of was the first thing I ever arbitraged. And then, of course, we moved to candy and snacks and drinks and things like that, and kind of figured out the importance of or the power of arbitrage, number one, and also the importance of negotiating and building relationships and things like that. And even though I was an 8th grader, I had a pretty good relationship with the manager of the shop, and pretty good relationship with the same driver that was there every week, and that all helped. When there are any problems. And then fast forward a little bit, I started selling insurance. I really try to hone in those sales skills a little bit. But then my wife and I decided we wanted to start a family. And I did not want to be slinging insurance out in the mean streets, at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, like sometimes you have to. And so I started looking for ways to make money on the internet. And this was before it was like super easy to find all that information. YouTube was, I want to say YouTube was around, but it certainly, it was just cat videos and stuff like that. It was not as much education as there is now. But fortunately, I found a podcast with, I'm gonna draw a blank here. The SPI podcast, Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn, and he had Jessica LaRue on. And then that led me to Chris Green and his book Arbitrage and Retail Arbitrage and Online Arbitrage. And I learned all about that. And then I took a step back and I started drop shipping on eBay. And once I figured out that was not really scalable, not for the way that I wanted things to go, then I went and started doing retail arbitrage. And it was great. We kind of got that figured out. We dabbled in some books. We dabbled in, buying stuff from the local Myers and Walgreens. But then I was like, there's got to be a better way. And I started figuring out online arbitrage with the help of a lot of other people in the Amazon community, too many to name. And the way that I've always been is when I learn something, I typically share it. So that was, helping other people in Facebook groups because they had helped me, and then starting to, branch out to YouTube and things like that to just share and answer questions and help people figure things out, because I figured if I was going down the path, there's got to be other people who are wanting to go down that path as well. And it's kind of felt like my obligation to, leave some breadcrumbs out there if I could to help anybody else.
Yeah, that seems like a typical, not totally typical, but somewhat of a typical story in that you were doing some other things. I love the pizza story, by the way. Arbitraging
Thanks.
pizza. That might still be a thing, honestly. I feel like that and tacos, they would probably both work. So for any kids listening, but ask your parents. But still, it's a good idea. But I think that that route you took from going in traditional businesses and so on, and then you started looking for other side hustles and ways to make money. That seems to be pretty common for a lot of people. It starts out as something to do on the side, maybe just a few extra bucks, and then before they know it, they're renting warehouse. So I know I've had a similar route myself. Do you think that route that you've taken so far, at least, and we'll get into maybe more specifics of that, but do you think the route you've taken, would you recommend people go that route today if they were just starting out here in 2022, or would you recommend a different route?
Uh, no, I'm kind of happy with the route that I took. Doing retail arbitrage was a really really good learning period. Uh, you know, Figuring out that you can't just scan barcodes, and that took me a while. I've got a little bit of a thick skull, but once you figure out that, oh, okay, well, I scanned 20 barcodes and only 10 of them actually pulled a product up, so I actually need to go back and I need to start looking by keywords and titles instead. That was a good learning experience. And the other thing that I think this can happen if both retail and online arbitrage, but being able to handle not finding anything. So if we go back to my sales career, one of the things you've got to be really, really good at is rejection. You just got to be able to handle it. People are going to say no. Matter of fact, there's a saying in the sales world that it takes anywhere between 7 and 10 no's to actually get a yes. That could be from one person, it could be from multiple people, whatever it is. But that's fairly typical. And when you're doing the arbitrage game, you're going to get rejected, quote unquote, by products. They're not going to be profitable, or maybe a retailer is going to kick you out of the store. That may have happened once or twice in my lifetime, and I know that it's happened to friends of mine. Or a retailer is going to cancel your order online. I actually had an order canceled just today, and I'm pretty sure I'm banned from that site now. That kind of stuff happens, and you need to be able to kind of take that in, allow it to happen, and realize that it's not the end of the world, even though it can feel like it, especially if it's a honey hole or something like that, and then be able to keep moving on or pivot in some way. I'm happy for all the bumps and bruises that kind of came along the path that I took.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something really important there, and I really like your approach. And a lot of people who resell whatever platform they get on, they want to. I find that a lot of people fall into this idea that I'm just going to do A, B, and C, profit, and then something happens. They get a suspension. They get kicked off a site. What was the one I heard yesterday? People complaining about the price of inventory lab went up. I got to get a new solution. I'm like, really? For $19 a month more, you're going to look for another solution? Okay. But I like that you have this cerebral approach about it that, okay, this is all encompassing in being a business. Things come at you from all kinds of directions, unintended or unexpected and not, and you have to be able to pivot. So what do you wish that you had known when you started that you know now, maybe about this? Is there anything or maybe a series of things, maybe small, maybe big, but are there things that, you think, man, and if I'd have known that 5 years ago, even a year ago, I would be this many steps ahead and I could have done this? Have there been things like that?
Yeah, I think so. A couple of these things I've known for a few years now, but they certainly help a lot. Number one, honestly, is cashback. And I think that a lot of people know about cashback, but newer folks, they typically don't. Maybe they've never heard of Rakuten or Rev ROI or anything else that's out there. And cashback is huge. Let's see, what was it? 2 days ago, I made $1,000 order, and the cashback, it's still pending, but it will get paid. It was $85 from one cashback site. I'm going to get another $10 because my cashback credit card is down to 1% now. So I'm going to get another $10 from my credit card. So $95 before I've even sent the stuff into Amazon. And then I figure there's going to be about $300 of profit on that $1,000 to spend. But 95, I mean, that's a quarter of the total profit is going to come through cash back. So that's huge, and then there's also, there's credit card hacking, and maybe you want to travel the world and things like that. I wish that I had done that a lot sooner, because the amount of free airline miles that we've used over the last 4 or 5 years has been insane. I don't think that we've paid for more than 1 or 2 flights over the past probably 4 years. Had I figured this out when I first got started, 10 years ago, I mean, who knows where we'd be? We may have traveled all over the world by now, and we're just not quite there yet. So I wish that I'd really started that a lot sooner.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point in that things like cashback those are easy wins that you really don't have to do anything to get other than just, click the button, click the Chrome extension at the top. I was doing some sourcing yesterday, and for whatever reason, for the past, probably month, I had completely forgotten about Raise gift cards at some sites, and buying gift cards and saving another 3, 4, 5%, and if, for every $10,000 you spend, that's $300, $400, $500 right back in your pocket.
Exactly.
That you didn't have to spend. It's so easy to do those things. And I think a lot of people, maybe the issue, Chris, I don't know what your thoughts are. Maybe the issue is because we forget about those things or we don't do those things. Maybe we heard about them. We watched a video. Somebody talked about them on Instagram. Maybe it's a system. Maybe our system, our process is not as good as it could be. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? How big is process in what you do? Are you a process guy, or you get up every day and kind of wing it?
I tend to fly by the seat of my pants, but my wife is really trying to rein me in on that. And she got me a desk pad, and I'm starting to take more notes and stuff like that. And so she's a saint for being patient with me about that kind of stuff. But a process is incredibly important. And even though I'm not the best at it now, I'd be happy to, shout this from the rooftops. It would be really, really wise for me to have, a checklist in Notion or on a piece of paper or, in Google Drive or wherever, so that I could go through the steps when I find a profitable product. And, if I found something at, let's say, Walgreens, and I'm like, okay, this is profitable. Well, I really should have a checklist. Okay, well, it's profitable. I've checked that it matches. Okay, let's look for, are there any gift cards? Well, Walgreens accepts gift cards on their website now, which they used to not do. However, the gift cards are all physical right now. None of them are e-gift cards. So I need to have those ahead of time. So, okay, that's something I can remember for next time. But cash back, I just forgot to hit the cash back button on my Walgreens purchase today, and I'm out that 3%. So did I hit the cash back button? All right, good. Did I use the right credit card? Am I cycling credit cards? And if that's the case, am I using the one that I need to be using at this current moment? So building out a process like that would be incredibly helpful, especially if you tend to be a little ADD like I am and get easily distracted and things like that.
Yeah, when you were talking about that, my thoughts initially immediately went to, I started a leads list earlier this year, and I've had to hire VAs. And I realized that I know how to analyze leads, but now I have to take people who are they've got their own system for how they're doing it, but there's, certain things that are different. And I realized that somewhere along the line, I went, I got to write this stuff down, man, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I understand as well as I thought I did. And when you have to teach it to someone, I have an education background. So I learned when you have to teach it to someone, you really have to know it. Like you really, because they're going to ask you any and every question you had never thought of. And so it's like when you get those employees in your organization, and I think if business owners thought about themselves as employees, we would probably be a little bit better with process, all of us, because we'd be like, hey, I could be systematic about this. I know it's going to earn me more money. It's going to save me less, save me expense, save me headache. But yeah, I find that lists too, I don't know about you, lists can become overwhelming. They can become a monster in and of themselves, and then they're not so useful as much as they used to be. I don't know if you find that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes they can be. You got to be careful. You don't want to necessarily fence someone in so much that they can't use their own creativity, their own skills, and their own, kind of critical thinking. Uh, but at the same time, you don't want them to veer so far off the path that it's not working anymore. So, for example, I've got a great VA. She's awesome. I think she does a great job. But we did have to change her process just a little bit the other day because she uses a VPN, and some things were showing in stock for her. And when I would go look at them, they weren't in stock.
Mm.
So we had to change that process a little bit. So there's kind of a couple of things I've studied the format for making processes, and you can build it out yourself and then have someone go through it, but eventually they need to be able to rewrite the process that you've created for them kind of in their own words, and allow them to kind of free form it so that they can maybe add things or take things away from it depending on what they think works. And if you both agree, a lot of times your employee will have a better process than you will have created. And that does two things. That makes them better. It makes you better because you get to realize that, okay, maybe the process wasn't 100% right. But then it also kind of makes them invest in the business a little bit more because they've created this thing that can be passed on to other people. So yeah, I think that's another important piece when you're dealing, especially with VAs, is to kind of allow them to take some ownership, so that they feel more part of the business and it's not just a transactional relationship.
For sure. I like that you have you mentioned people writing their own process, how they do their jobs, because I realized in mine, and I'm sure you've had the same aha moments at certain points along the way. At some point, you become the bottleneck in your business. You become the bottleneck in the process. Whatever limitations you have, whether it be time or energy or skills or whatever it is, and that person doing the job, doing every day there in the trenches, seeing it, feeling it, touching it every day, they probably are better at it than you, which I think is something that a lot of people maybe in our community who would start, they're solopreneurs, right? They wear every hat. They're the sourcer, they're the prep and shipper, they're the person doing the books and filling out the spreadsheets and stuff, putting stuff in boxes. But eventually you realize you can only do so much of that. Your time is not maximized sometimes. At least your hourly rate is not maximized when you're doing sort of these other jobs that someone else could be doing, and they probably can be doing better than you and her. But it's hard sometimes, I think, to explain that to people who've never really thought it through all the way, especially if they've come from maybe a traditional 8 to 5 sort of mentality. Well, I just got to work and do everything in my business. But that I ran into that a lot when I was in the eBay space, because it's a little bit more labor intensive than Amazon in a lot of ways because of the fulfillment issues. But I think we could do a whole show on that that particular issue and what's reasonable to do and take on your business and what isn't. But I want to switch gears a little bit here and ask you about mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have a mentor in the Amazon space, and maybe you did in insurance too. But I want to ask you if you did, and why you chose to have one. And do you consider yourself a mentor, given all the things that you do with your content and so on in the community?
Uh, it's a good question. So I definitely have had several mentors. I've been fairly lucky. Chris Green is and was a mentor. He's always been willing to answer questions and help me out. Nate McAllister is not only one of my closest friends, but also a mentor. And I've been lucky to be able to learn from guys like Bob Steele and folks like Nicole Barton, and there's just a ton of them out there. I think that I've always tried to approach finding a mentor a little bit differently than other people. I don't. I try not to just go with my hand out. Asking, what kind of information can you offer me? I really try to
Right.
do some sort of value exchange first. And I know that sounds hokey or, trite maybe, but I really do think that showing someone that you're willing to, give first, uh, it makes them know that you're not just there to take what you can and that's it. Uh, and that's worked well for me. Now, the one piece of advice that I could offer there is if you're going to use that approach, you have to mean it. You can't just fake it and be like, oh well, I'm going to try to offer this thing of value, but it's not really valuable for that person. You uh, kind of need to tailor it to whoever you're trying to work with. And for some
Mm.
people, maybe that's money. For other people, could be connections, could be a gift, or whatever it is. And the best story I have about this is Nate McAllister, who him and I are now like best buds. But when I wanted to learn some things that he was doing and how he did them, he said, does anybody know of an extension or a piece of software that will hide things in Google Chrome for like screen recordings? There wasn't anything that existed at the time. There is now. So what I did is I went out and I had an extension created from a developer on Fiverr. And I reached out and I said, hey man, I said, I know that you were looking for a piece of software that would blur items in Google Chrome. I said, I couldn't find one. I said, so I had one made. Here it is. You can install it. You can use it. It doesn't cost a penny. And that kind of snowballed into, what is our friendship and business partnership now. Uh, Now, you can't do that for everybody, but that's probably one of my better examples. Uh, Now, to the second part of that question, do I consider myself a mentor? Uh, I don't think that I would consider myself that. Uh, I don't know. It kind of feels like there are people who maybe I put up on pedestals who, have been mentors, in my own life. And I don't know. I don't necessarily feel worthy of that title quite yet. Uh, I'm just a guy out here trying to help people, whenever they get stuck.
I think the fact that you don't feel worthy of it means you are. I think that's a very good sign. That's usually an indication that someone has enough humility to realize they don't know everything either, but they're going to share what they know and help if they can and be available when needed, if possible. And that's a big credit to you. I mean, that's anybody who comes on. I think sometimes we, as a community of resellers and so on, we get that anybody comes on and creates content, no matter how good or bad it is, no matter how useful or not useful it is, no matter how repetitive it is or not repetitive, it takes the creator's time and effort and energy. And often people are doing it for little to no financial gain, especially if you're,
Hmm.
a small channel or don't have a large following or whatever, which is the majority of us. We're not huge and making mountains of money off of AdSense or even affiliate links, but and it takes a lot of time too. And I think everyone who does that to some degree is a mentor. But I feel like, with you, you're in so many different areas. I was talk about in your intro about being, you're doing a blog, you have the OA challenge, clear the shelf, you're on YouTube, Instagram, you know, it's not even just one avenue. And I think when you do that, you're mentoring people, maybe even people you're never even going to meet, you're never even going to talk to, but they're going to walk up to you at some conference someday, or or see you outsourcing somewhere and go, "Hey, you're Chris Grant. I just want to tell you, man, you helped me out," and that's a great feeling for sure. But I think you're already doing it just in a way that maybe is not as prototypical as like, "Hey, sign up for my course." You have like a combination of things. You have courses, you have channel, you have your blog, and so on. So it's like it's a mixture of content. That to me is somebody who really is a mentor. So I would give yourself some credit for that. I'll give you the credit, even if you won't give yourself the credit. But
I appreciate that.
So
I do have a little bit of a funny story.
Absolutely.
Based off of what you said there. So I wear a lot of my own swag, so I have an OA challenge shirt, and my wife wanted one in pink, so I got her one. And just the other day, she was wearing it, and she walked into a Publix here locally in suburbs of Orlando. And as she walked by someone, they pointed and they said, "Hey, I took that course." And now I will be honest, that did make me feel pretty good.
That's awesome. Especially you got the cred from the wife story too.
Yeah.
And full disclosure there too. Hey, I think you're in Florida, right? So let's keep Publix and sourcing there a secret, okay? Let's not tell anybody. Love Publix. All right. So what sort of books would you recommend the AZ sellers read and so on? I know that you have some of them, I think, I see some of them in your descriptions and so on. Is there a book list, if you said, and I know a lot of people don't like to read, maybe they want to do, what is it, Blinkist or whatever, the quick one. Is there any sources you would say, hey, you should probably go read these and check these out, and go do them as you go along the way? Even maybe you don't have to read all of them at once before you start, but is there any things that you would read about, want people to read in terms of mindset or skills and tactics?
Yeah. If we're talking skills and tactics, you're probably not going to go wrong with books like Small Time Operator or Profit First or The Pumpkin Plan, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. Those are going to be all pretty good tactical books. There is Getting Things Done. That's another kind of tactical book on productivity. If we're talking like general business and mindset, I think that one of the best books probably ever written is going to be Atomic Habits. It is, in my opinion, pound for pound, probably the best book on the planet. Outside of that, I'm a huge fan of Ryan Holiday and Stoicism. I think there are a lot of crossovers to Stoic philosophy and business that we can put into place. And so I do a couple of things. I have a daily reader of Ryan Holiday's, and of course, it's somewhere. Anyway, I have his daily reader. I would also suggest maybe Leo Tolstoy's Daily Book of Wisdom. I like Robert Greene's The Daily Laws. Not everyone's a Robert Greene fan, but he seems a little kooky, but some of the things that he says are fairly interesting and applicable to business. Skip the Line is another really, really excellent book. Sorry, I'm going to go on for a while here. So, Skip the Line is another really, really good book. And then I guess the last thing I would say is read biographies of people throughout history who have done really well business-wise. There is actually a really good book called The Fish That Ate the Whale. And it's about a guy by the last name is Zamuri. and they called him the Banana Man. But he arbitraged bananas back in the day. They were these things called, I think they're called ripes or something. But as soon they would bring bananas from the south to the north, and about halfway along the way, maybe a quarter of the bananas would start getting little brown spots. And the people in New York would not buy those ones. So he would buy carloads of them and hop off the train and sell them to some of the less wealthy people who were along the train ride. He became so wealthy by doing that. And I mean, he actually helped almost have a coup in Honduras because he became so wealthy through arbitraging bananas. And there are a lot of things that you can learn from these guys. I don't read every biography, but I do listen to a great podcast called Founders. And this guy, he will read. I just finished the one on John D. Rockefeller. And the thing that I really took away from that one is how much focus that is required if you really, really want to grow something large. And Rockefeller's focus was unshakable, and it was fascinating. So, but yeah, reading biographies of business owners and founders and interesting people, there are a lot of things that even 150, 200 years ago are actually still applicable to today. And we can learn from the people who've come before us. And so that's been something we've really been hitting pretty hard here lately.
100% agree with you. That was a great list. I'll have to go back and write those down and maybe provide some links to them on Amazon or something, but because that was tremendous. And I know you have some too that you provide, but I think that might be a lost art with a lot of people who are in business for themselves. We get so busy doing the thing, whatever the thing is in our business, we forget to educate. We forget to read for inspiration. We forget to see the examples of others that we maybe can learn from them, and maybe not make some of their mistakes, maybe emulate some of their successes and so on. So I had a question about where do you self-educate, but I think you just answered that completely. So I'm not going to ask that question, but
well, I can give you a little bit more. Yeah. So on the topic of self-education, because I do think I have a touch of ADD, and it's completely self-diagnosed, I do like to take in a lot of information. So books, of course, are the greatest. The amount of the return you can get on a $20 investment, even if it's just one or two pages, can absolutely make you way more than the book would ever cost. But we've also got podcasts these days, and podcasts are fantastic. I mean, we're listening, and we're doing one here, but there are so many business related podcasts that are really, really good. And people just giving away all the secrets, on an open forum. But yeah, podcasts, and find the ones you like. Books, absolutely. And then I read as many blogs as I can as well. There are just some really, really great ones out there, just on any topic.
Yeah, it's almost now we've gotten to the point where it's so much information, you really have to pick and choose where you devote and spend your time. There's no shortage of information, that's for sure. And anyone who doesn't feel like they know something, it's so funny we're talking about this. I was changing the windshield wipers on my fiance's Prius today, and the back windshield wiper had kind of a funny assembly, and I fired up a YouTube video and I said, how do you change the rear windshield wiper Prius? And sure enough, there's a guy there in a minute and 30 seconds. I was like, oh, it's this little clip down here and not up here, and everything was like solid black and you can't see where anything's a button or anything on it, or a clip or a place to press or anything. But I was like, man, there's no shortage of information. Obviously, there's no shortage of answers there if you just take the time to look. But I think, you bring up great points about, you need to have a wide range of places to find your information from. You want to get maybe even people outside of the reselling world, as you mentioned as well, so that you get different perspectives. Um, business is business to some degree across the board. There's some things that are very fundamental and universal from this industry to this industry. So, but what do you think's changed about selling on Amazon from when you started until now? That we talked about, things that, you take, how you would recommend someone take the same route or not. You did, but what do you think's fundamentally changed, maybe on Amazon, that from when you started, that's, really changed the way that you run your business?
Mm-hmm. It's definitely gotten harder, and I don't necessarily think harder in a bad way. It's just the marketplace has matured. So when I started on Amazon, I mean, it
Hmm.
was the Wild West. For example, I sold a used board game when I was first on Amazon, and I made sure all the pieces were there. I was trying to follow terms of service, but I was allowing Amazon to mix my inventory with other sellers' inventory, and so someone else's inventory made it to my customer. And it wasn't all there. It wasn't right. And so, of course, they were upset. Well, back then, we could just message the customer, and I was like, hey, here's what happened, and I'm sorry. I'll refund you. Would you take down your negative feedback and all that kind of stuff? And, it was absolutely just fine. But Amazon has matured. Sellers have matured, and there are more sellers who do treat this like a real business. It's not, I'm not just going out to flip products. I'm building something serious. I'm using a marketplace, and I'm really building a real business with employees and processes and all kinds of things. And that's our competition now. It's not just, a husband and wife going to Walmart and finding whatever's profitable. It's people building the next pharma packs, which it's not a bad thing. It just means that we've got to be better at what we do, than you had to be 10 years ago. And I think it's a good thing. One, it's better for the customer, which in the long term is better for us as sellers. But it also forces us to be better business people. And for those of us who decide to do that, I think that's going to be a positive long term, and we'll stick around and we'll be fine. And then it is going to separate the wheat from the chaff. There are going to be people who it's just not for them quite yet, and that's okay too.
As you were talking about that, I was thinking about what has changed for me as well. Just to kind of, because it's like change happens incrementally a lot of times, and then one day you wake up and say, "Man, it's much different than it was a year ago or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's drastically different. Like, how did this happen?" And it just happened in small little bite-sized pieces. But I was doing an interview last week, and the question came up, and we were having a conversation, and I thought about, my time at Amazon working there. Last year, I started working there in 2019 for a sortation center, and stopped there in 2021. And I was just a regular Joe for a while, and then got a trainer position in there. And we were a building that we weren't a fulfillment center, but we got the boxes out the door that last mile to the customer. They combined all the zip codes from a couple states, and all those boxes and packages came there. And that building, which was a small building by Amazon standards, like 400,000 square feet, small building, right? But it was, it was doing 1 million boxes every 4 days during Q4, in and out of the door in 24 hours. It was unbelievable when you think about the logistics of that. And that was the key. That's when it hit me. I went, man, I knew this before, but I hadn't seen it before. Amazon is not a sales company. They're a logistics company. They're trying to get
Mm-hmm.
something from A to B as quickly and cheaply, as effectively as they can. And if you, as a seller, maybe you agree or disagree with this, Chris, but I think if you as a seller, if you understand that and you play in that sandbox with Amazon, you will be rewarded. You will be successful. But if you try to do anything that's outside of that, Amazon's just going to slam the door in your face and say, you're causing us problems. We don't want you here. Is that your take on it?
Yeah, I would I would agree with that, and I think that we see Amazon doing things differently to stop the folks who are like, yeah, kind of have their heels dug in. Amazon's changing the way that, well, Amazon has changed the way that you can change shipments. We used to be able to create a shipment and then remove 10 units if we didn't want to send something to a particular warehouse. Uh, Heck, there was a time when you didn't even have to put in the size of the box that you were sending into Amazon. You just say, hey, yeah, this box is 32 pounds. Don't worry about the dimensions, and so over time, Amazon has changed that incrementally, and then people try to figure out ways around the rules and things like that, and Amazon figures that out, and then they shut that down as well. And so, we're kind of seeing that come to fruition, especially with the way that the inbound shipping is going and things like that. And so, yeah, absolutely, I do agree with you.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because the operations, that particular building was split up into a few different areas. Operations was who was really in charge, but their singular focus was getting the crap out the door. And because it couldn't stay, and they did, it was gone, and they did that even, it was a really good place to work, all things considered, in a lot of aspects, honestly. But safety and learning and training and things like that sometimes took a back door to getting the boxes out the door, or a back seat rather, to the getting the box out the door, because that's what they were there to do. That was their singular focus. And so it just illustrated to me again, like, this is who you need to be. And I saw some crazy stuff come down the conveyor belts from sellers, Lego with, shipping label just stuck right, their effing SKU label right on the outside of the box, this $150 set, not in a box, nothing. And I'm going, all right, that's a 100% getting destroyed. It's going to hit the floor. And by the time it gets to that collector, they're going to be hating life. What's motivating you right now, Chris? Why and why you're doing all this?
Yeah. So my why is, and I know this is going to sound cliche, but it is 100% my family. My wife and my son are my absolute why. Creating a life that they absolutely love, and that ends up making my son to become a successful part of society as he grows older. That is why I do this. It's why I have not moved my office out of my home. I want him to see Dad at work, and building something. And I want him to be able to come in and ask questions and be curious. And we went and bought a new bed recently. And my son was asking questions about how the furniture store made money. He was asking me questions about how the furniture store made money. And we started talking about, we started talking about how they have to buy inventory, and then they have to sell that inventory to customers. And then we discussed, fixed cost. And he's 8, so he didn't understand all of this, but we talked about fixed costs, and we talked about overhead, and we talked about soft costs like employees, and how that cost can go up and down, and then we talked about profit margins, and he's understood some of it, but a lot of it went right over his head. But the one of the managers came over to me and he's like, "Is that how you speak to your son all the time?" And I was like, yeah, why not? He's going to have to learn this stuff eventually, especially if he decides to go into business or anything like that. So why not at least plant some seeds now? And the guy kind of looked at me like I was a little crazy, but that's kind of the reason that I do this, is so that my wife and my son can have a life like like hopefully not a whole lot of other people. Well, I'd love everyone to have that kind of life, but not a lot of other people are willing to do what it takes, and so that's kind of why I do this.
No, that's terrific. I don't, and if it's cliched, then sign me up for the cliche as well, because that's I think the reason a lot of people are doing it. And I think it's great that your son is learning that from an entrepreneurial standpoint. But even if he's an employee someday for someone, he's going to understand that his employer has those same concerns and challenges too. And it's not as simple as sometimes we see in society. People want to, they want to distill issues down to just give me this or else. You can do it, you can afford it. It's not that simple. When you're in business, there's a lot of complexities and expenses that people don't really understand. So I think you're teaching him some great lessons that he'll be able to use later down the road. Tell me about Clear the Shelf and what Clear the Shelf is about exactly. I think I know, sort of, but maybe I don't. What's your vision for Clear the Shelf?
So, honestly, it was kind of a throwaway idea when I bought the domain. But I was doing
Great
a
name,
lot
by
of
the way.
thank you. I was doing a lot of retail arbitrage at the time, and there were times when I would go into Meijer and negotiate a discount on clearance, and I would clear the shelf of all the product. And so I was like, you know what? And I wanted to get into blogging. I wanted another way to be able, because I like writing. I wanted to be another way to be able to give back to the community. And so I said, you know what? Let's start a blog called Clear the Shelf. And so that's kind of the place where I put all of our content that is educational, and anything that's helpful. It all kind of goes there. And we're in the process of trying to grow that and make that better right now. So we've got some help. I can't write everything, unfortunately, as much as I'd love to. So got some help with writing and things like that, and trying to pump out as much quality content and make sure that there's a resource with good educational material for people who want to get into this business.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that goes back to that mentorship idea. I think we'll have links to that down in the description of this video as well. So you definitely should go check that out. Last big question here, I guess. What concerns you, if anything, about the future of selling on Amazon?
It's a great question. The only thing that really concerns me is that we are playing in someone else's sandbox, and with that comes risk. You can be deplatformed at any time, and that whether it's your Facebook account, your Twitter account, your Instagram account, or your Google account, whatever it is, you can get deplatformed, and that happens on Amazon as well. Now, I think that most of the time when they suspend someone or kick someone off the platform, there's probably a good reason. But of course, along with that, there are people who get caught up for no good reason at all. And I know that when you're on the receiving end of it, there's never a good reason for it to happen. But in the future, what does happen with the platform? Is it around for the long haul? I think Amazon wants it to be. If the FTC had their way, I'm sure they would like things to be a little bit different. So we don't know how that's going to go. And if the FTC were to get their way, does Amazon break the marketplace up into two, or do they quit selling first party and it's only a marketplace? Well, we can't know. I'm sure that there will be some sort of marketplace no matter what. We just don't know what it could look like in 5 or 10 years down the road. Is there a chance that Amazon were to say, hey, we don't want this kind of selling on our platform? Yeah, it's possible. Amazon is pretty smart, so I highly doubt they're going to get rid of arbitrage sellers anytime soon, because we do fill a very critical role with long tail products that they're not going to be able to stock themselves. But yeah, that's really the only, I guess, fear, if you want to call it that I have is we don't control the marketplace. However, there will likely always be a marketplace for reselling. Before the internet, it was garage sales and flea markets. And then the internet came along, and there was eBay and Craigslist, and now there is Amazon, and Walmart is a growing marketplace. And we don't know what the next one will be, but if any of the current marketplaces do fall, another one will take its place. So there will always be some sort of marketplace for us to leverage.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. It's hard to imagine it going away. And when you were talking about the role of third-party sellers on Amazon, I remember back to my working days there, doing anything in my job required an immense number of legacy computer systems that I had to open up to get anything done. It was kind of crazy to think about us being this big technology company. And I literally started the day by opening 19 tabs instantly the second I opened my browser, and I needed them all.
Wow.
It would be hard for me to think about Amazon. Yeah, I have stories, sir, but it would be hard for me to think about them getting their technological back end together enough to where they could, as efficient and as awesome as they are at doing certain things, to where they could figure out ordering and, keeping items in fulfillment centers and the quantities they need. When you think about supplying, if they want to supply their current customers 100% of the items coming from Amazon, let's say, then that means that's like what, 55% of their current inventory they would have to take over ownership of, getting in, storing. You talk about, it's doubling, what they already have, and they're already tricky on space, in their FCs. Now they just, they keep adding options for us as sellers. Hey, liquidate it. Hey, have it shipped back to you. Hey, donate it to charity. If you don't want this anymore, we need it out of our building. So, and I get that. That totally makes sense. So it's hard to imagine they would go down that road too far. I think you're dead on it. But as you mentioned, for sure, things will change. Things will be different. They'll be different next week, next month, a year from now, 100%. So as owners, business owners, we always have to be adept, I think, to be able to pivot and change as Amazon, gives us a new playbook, so to speak. Where can people get a hold of you, Chris? I know that there's always people who, I don't want to flood people your way one way or the other, but I know there are people with genuine questions, and you seem like such a nice, affable guy. And when people ask you questions or even ask you for interviews, you're a nice, affable guy. So, but how can people get a hold of you? What are the best ways?
So there are four ways that are probably the best to get a hold of me. One is going to be cleartheshelf.com. You're more than welcome to go there. I think I've got a contact us button, and you can always sign up for the email list as well. We send out a weekly newsletter. I am on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter. I'm at Clear the Shelf at all of those. I do own that handle on TikTok as well, but I don't know. I just haven't gotten the platform down yet, so I don't really hang out there. But Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. More than welcome to send me a friend request or follow me or whatever you want to do. And DMs are always open if someone needs to get a hold of me.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm sure everybody will be checking that out. As we said, we'll have those links down in the description below. And I just want to thank you for tonight, Chris. It was really great getting to pick your brain on some of these subjects. I love your analytical approach to the business. I try to mirror that in my own approach to my own business. And I think a lot of sellers can benefit from, using those sort of tactics to make their own business better. But thank you so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. And again, I wish you nothing but the greatest success in the future.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.